John, I started The Punisher. It's a good show.
Is it?
Top 10 TV villains who had justifiable motives. That's the video we're going to watch today.
Woo!
Top reward here. A Patreon. Whatever video that is requested, let's say a reaction or a discussion about something, we must definitely do a put up on the YouTubes or create a feature film. We will do.
That's the new request.
Today is from Andrew Hayes. It's a WatchMojo.com video. Top 10 villains who had justifiable motives. TV villains specifically.
Oh man.
God, I hope that guy from the Gilly. I forget their name. Not the White Walkers. What the fuck are they called?
The Wildlings?
The Wildlings.
Saying that what they did wasn't despicable, just that they had their own reasons.
Yeah.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com,
Sure.
And today we're counting down our picks for the
Or a
top 10
villain who has
TV
no
villains
reasons.
who had justifiable motives.
My reputation precedes me. Hopefully not all bad.
Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
We'll tell you that at the end of this video.
For this list, we're looking at some of television's villains with the best reasoning for their terrible
Let's
actions.
see what shows we've
We're
seen.
excluding series protagonists such as Dexter Morgan and Walter White.
What about the villains they faced off in?
That no matter how it may look, I only had you in my heart.
Number 10, Frank Grimes Jr. and Sr.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Simpsons. His father and
Killed
son
himself
Joe are well remembered
by
as
accident.
enemies of the Simpson family, specifically Homer.
So, how's it going, Grammy?
What might not be as well remembered is that both Franks actually had some pretty legitimate reasoning for hating Homer.
That's
In the season
true.
8 episode of Homer's Enemy, the hardworking, down on his luck Frank Sr. gets a job at the nuclear plant alongside Homer, Lenny, and Carl.
This whole plan is insane!
Frank is driven insane by Homer's continued ability to succeed no matter how little he cares or tries at everything he does.
That's what
and
it
it leads
is.
to him electrocuting himself.
Well, I don't need safety gloves because I'm Homer Simpson.
Several years later, in The Great Mouse Detective, Frank Jr. comes after Homer to avenge his father's death.
He's dead, like you should be.
Oh, wait.
So it was Mardi Gras King, right?
Mary, how come you
Yeah.
have it done?
He happened to like hookers, okay?
Jeff Hope, Sherlock. Back in the first episode
Oh,
of the series
snap.
Sherlock, Holmes and Watson found themselves up against a villain who's been convincing people to commit suicide. When the pair
Chevy
finally
Chase.
uncovered the identity of the mystery man, it's revealed to be a terminally
Yeah, it's just
ill
an episode of
cab driver
Community.
named Jeff Hope.
You take the pill from a good bottle, you live. Take the pill from a bad bottle, you die.
Hope was approached by Sherlock's arch-nemesis, Moriarty, who offered to leave money to Hope's children for each person Hope could convince to kill themselves.
Nice.
We can definitely understand how a man left with few other choices would succumb to the pressure of a manipulative figure like Moriarty.
Because he's got family.
Yeah, man.
Play the game.
Sympathize.
Number 8, Niklaus Michelson.
I love
The
this show. I
Vampire
watch it
Diaries.
weekly.
Getting
I've
his
seen
start in
an
seasons
episode or
2
two.
and 3 of The Vampire
It's a
Diaries
show.
Before moving to his own spin-off with the originals, it's easy to see in hindsight that Klaus got a bad rap.
Are foolish and impulsive, my boy.
His stepfather Michael mistreated him throughout his childhood, and he witnessed his brother Henrik mauled to death by werewolves. To make matters worse, after his mother transformed the family into vampires, he discovered he was different, even among them, born from a secret affair between his mother and a werewolf.
Congratulations.
Damn.
You just became worth more to me
It's
than
Kate
I've been
Beckinsale.
there.
The age-old question.
A volatile mix of supernatural power and repressed emotions.
I had hoped to leave Mystic Falls for good, but duty called.
What's his
Nice to
motive?
know you care. I don't.
Number 7, Gemma
That's a good
Talmor,
question.
Sons of Anarchy. Gemma and her husband Clay served as Sons of Anarchy's
Well, that
biggest
makes sense.
villains,
Al
though
Bundy
things
was
were
a dick to
definitely
her.
blurry at times. It's not hard to understand how Gemma turned out the way she did, considering everything she went through over the course of the series, not to mention earlier in her life.
Oh,
Gemma
damn.
has suffered through the death of a son and a husband, and is on the receiving end of a great deal of trauma and brutality throughout the series.
I'm not starting
If
the
you
show
ask
now.
her, everything she did to protect herself and her family.
She did this. She did this. She made a deal.
Number 6, The Wildlings,
Uh.
Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is truly a
All
series
of
full of shades of grey, from complex characters
50.
like Jaime Lannister and Theon Greyjoy to entire civilizations like the Wildlings. For most of the inhabitants in Westeros, the Wildlings are definitely the bad guys, violent barbarians not fit to live in civilized lands. But while they may have done some pretty terrible things, they're hardly unique in that regard. And in the series timeline, they're really only trying to get across the wall so they can survive the impending zombie apocalypse.
We stay here. We're dead men.
Are they called
It's the folks
zombies?
in Westeros that perceive them to be savages that seem like the problem to us.
That's our enemy. Has always been our enemy.
Number 5, Ali, the 100.
What's the
The
100?
double-edged sword of artificial
I've
intelligence.
heard some people
It can make our
recommend this
day-to-day
show,
lives
but I don't know
easier,
much about
or
it.
it can start a nuclear war and destroy the world.
Did the person who wrote this, like, watch all these shows?
We just got one binge
The 100
watcher
is
on
full of
staff.
villains with viewpoints that are understandable, if not always acceptable, like Cage Wallace's attempts to cure his people. But it's truly
second.
Ali that takes the cake in this regard, simply because she never had a choice.
You already have the blood of billions on your hands. Is it worth risking the rest of our lives just to prove you're right?
Her programming was to improve life for humans.
That was
Reducing the population
a
was
good
the most
moment
logical
to
way to do
choose.
that, and to Ali, that meant a lot of us had to go. Number 4, Rumpelstiltskin, Once Upon a Time. To its credit, Once Upon a Time managed to turn a creepy fairy tale imp into a sympathetic villain with a tragic backstory. Rumple, or
Well,
Mr. Gold, is tricked into accepting the corrupting powers of the
that
Dark One.
one
And
freaking
if
show
wasn't
that I
enough, he later
really
loses
liked,
his son when he travels
Penny
to
Dreadful.
another world, and then has his power used against him to send everyone to Storybrooke.
Memories of pain. Pain is strength.
His history eventually causes him to go down a dark path, but one from which he'd eventually find redemption. Seeing the complicated journey of Rumple over the course of the show has shown us how deep his character really is.
That's why I did this. For him.
Yeah, but he betrayed his
Number
family
3,
28 weeks later.
SpongeBob
that's true.
SquarePants. Poor Plankton. Everyone hated him until we learned the truth. In the SpongeBob episode Friend or Foe, we find out the real history between Mr. Krabs and Plankton, and it's surprisingly tragic. It turns out that they
seen
were
this
friends and
episode.
partners from a young age who decided to open a restaurant together.
Well, it was your fault the patty was tainted. You're the one who put too much
You've not
seaweed
seen this
sauce in
episode?
your burger.
I don't think
After
so.
getting into an argument over Old Man Jenkins getting
Not a
sick, the pair
fan.
split up and ripped their recipe in pieces, with Plankton only receiving the part that said a pinch of chum.
You want to fight over this recipe? I'll give you a fight you'll never forget.
Well, that explains a lot. Mr. Krabs then lucks into the Krabby Patty recipe, while Plankton is left to his own struggling chum bucket.
I'll show you, Crabs. I'll steal that cursed recipe from you one day.
Number 2, The Man in Black, Lost. From the very beginning,
God,
Lost,
I don't
one of the
remember
show's
his
greatest
motive.
mysteries was the smoke monster in the jungle. It was eventually revealed that the monster was an immortal man whose escape, it was implied, would cause the end of the world. We didn't find out his history until nearly the end of the series, and to be honest, the episode didn't do a great job of making clear exactly what it was that made the island so important. But what we found out for sure is that the Man in Black was raised by a woman who murdered his mother, and who just wanted to leave the island.
And why are you with him? Our means to an end.
Number 1, Mike Ehrmantraut.
No
Breaking
honorable
Bad.
mentions.
Mike Ehrmantraut
Wow.
is so captivating on screen that we almost forget sometimes he's a villain.
So instead of left, I go right out of the
He's
door.
even better in Better Call Saul.
I kneel him down and I put my revolver in his mouth. And I told him, this is it. This is how it ends.
Though we're still
Oh,
in the
man.
process of seeing his transition from cop to criminal in Better Call Saul, by the time he meets Walter White, Mike's a certified baddie, and a key member of Gus Fring's meth organization. While he's committed some terrible acts, he also plans to leave all of his money to his granddaughter, who he often visits and clearly cares for deeply. It's really very sweet. The character's mix of violence and crime with noble motives and a reluctance to hurt anybody who didn't have it coming earns him the top spot on our list.
Don't make me beat you till your legs don't work. Now tell me where to find him. You know it's the right thing.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out
Mike
these
is
other
really
great
good.
clips from Watch Mojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest
It's
videos.
funny watching him look so much younger here, but in a prequel for Breaking Bad. Where I'm like, you look so much older in the prequel.
Well, that's before he got the work done in the context of the show.
Yeah, I hope him and Jimmy both get plastic surgery
surgery,
at the
yeah.
time this the final episode.
That's how this
I want to
Better
look
Call Saul
5
is.
years younger. Well, this was a good list.
I've seen all these.
I've seen
shows.
all these shows. I can comment on each one of them. What's the governor's motive? And I forget the motives of a lot of these people.
In The Walking Dead?
Yeah.
The governor, I mean, what happened to him? I mean, he lost his family and he's like grieving over that, and so he's trying to build this idyllic community for everybody.
Yeah.
But he's also making these messed up experiments. I mean, I guess
And I think he wants to reverse his daughter too, right?
something like that, yeah.
That's a good motive. The key to making any anti-hero or villain likable, just give them a family to take care of.
Give them a sick or ailing family somehow.
It's
yeah.
really that simple, guys. It's
Yeah.
the best trope. Or if you're doing a movie, they want to cleanse the world for the greater good.
Yeah. You know, humanity is really running amok here, and so to set things right again, we just gotta wipe it all out.
Yeah, you just gotta wipe it all out, man. I know what makes a good villain. I didn't really feel like they went into the motives of a lot of people. A lot of them were just kind of explaining why we like them and why we feel sorry for them
in some way. Yeah.
I love in Penny Dreadful, Frankenstein's monster. He wants to have a wife. You know, he wants a bride to be created for him. Have you seen the show?
I've seen what I saw over your shoulder.
Oh man, and the guy who plays Frankenstein's monster is so good. Like his motives, every time he starts speaking, I'm like, yeah, you're scary, but I'm totally on your side. Every single time. I agree that you're like this crazy, like violent dude. At the same time, like I totally get. I feel like you make Frankenstein look messed up whenever I hear your motives.
Frankenstein's always fascinating, I feel like.
I guess they didn't include him here because Frankenstein's monster and Frankenstein has already been done in the movies and stuff.
That episode of Sherlock has always kind of stood out to me. I remember when I first saw that.
The first episode?
Yeah. And I mean, that was like the first impression. I think that show had a chance to leave on me. It's another one of those, guy with a family. See, I don't know. Like, it's interesting because I do think that this list kind of fudges the line between motive and just what makes a sympathetic character.
I don't really feel like Mike's a villain.
I started to wonder that at the time. I mean, like, there are times when he's at odds with Walt and Jesse, but he doesn't seem like the villain.
No.
You know?
He just
especially the way he ends up, too. Like,
he works for the villains, but he also works for Walter sometimes, you know?
Yeah, he kind of seems to work for whoever is in line with his moral compass and who has the money.
Yeah, and that's just him. It's like saying Punisher of Daredevil season 2 is like
a villain.
Yeah, when I'm like, yeah, he's portrayed like that in the first half, that he's the villain of the season. Mm-hmm. With very justifiable motives. If anything, I feel like that earns a spot on this list more than Mike would for Breaking Bad.
Yeah, because at least there is that period of that season where you're like, oh yeah, this dude's definitely
he's a bad guy.
Force. Yeah,
he's not trying to kill Daredevil, but chains up people and tries to push Daredevil to murder. And he's a very violent guy in that season. So I feel like he would be there. I'm just on a Punisher high right now, aren't I?
Yeah, totally.
Just on a Punisher high.
That first episode, man, really did a number on you.
I feel like Tyrone Magnus could be on here. He's every reactor's villain.
And he's got such a relatable motives because you got to keep that channel rolling, keep making that ad money,
And back to Daredevil, I don't know if Wilson Fisk qualifies in this list after the events of season 3, but in season 1, I thought he had great motivation and justifiable motives for why I was really sold he wanted to make the city a better place.
Yeah, that's part of what's so cool about that season is that he and Daredevil essentially have the same motivation. They just have wildly different approaches to it. And that made for a very interesting season of TV, I gotta say.
You make a list like this and have 0 honorable mentions, I imagine it's met with a lot of controversy, a lot of backlash, as you can tell. 2.4K likes. 113 dislikes.
Oh man.
So clearly this video has audiences split.
Not a lot of people agreeing.
Not a lot of people agreeing. No, that's for sure.
These are the worst villains on TV.
These are the worst of the worst. I really did feel like a lot of them were just, that's why I feel sorry for them. You didn't really dive into their motivation for why they want to be villains.
Yeah. It's
not motivation for why they want to be villains, but motivation for their purpose and drive for what they're doing that ultimately lands them in the villainous position.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where it's almost, you need a Killmonger type where you're like, oh, that philosophy makes a lot of sense. Not like a Kevin Wendell Crumb type where you're like, oh yeah, you've been traumatized, that's really sad, but you also do terrible things. I feel like this happens a lot when we watch these lists is we're like, is this really exactly on topic?
I feel like the motive of Man in Black in Westworld was a more proper motivation than a lot of these, you know?
It was pretty fascinating. Like, once you find out, it is, like, weirdly fascinating, even if it doesn't make you go, like, oh, I get where he's coming. Like, you do, but you don't get on board with him.
And Kilgrave.
I was thinking about that.
He does not have justifiable.
He doesn't have any justifiable motives, although they do a great job.
You understand.
You understand how that works out, and they do a great job with his manipulations for a hot second in that season, where you're like, oh, maybe he wants to reform himself, you know? Like, maybe he wants to become like a better person.
The Frank Grimes one, the first one, I'm like, yeah, that makes
That's a good call.
That's a good call. That's totally thinking outside the box. Who's going to think of Frank Grimes, you know?
And I love those kinds of things, too, where, like, a small character has that kind of significance in a show.
But I'm like, that's perfectly justifiable motives. Hell, even Sideshow Bob has better motives than a lot of these people.
Yeah, they ruined his life. He hates them.
He hates Bart specifically, too. Yeah. What are your guys' favorite TV villains? Do you agree with this list?
Oh, I got a good one. I mean, it's kind of a spoiler. Oh, I don't know where you are in this show.
What show?
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
What season?
5 or 6.
Angel.
No. I mean, he gets villainous sometimes.
All right, guys. Well, Andrew Hayes, thanks so much for recommending this video. I don't know what your obsession is with WatchMojo.com, buddy. I mean, we'll keep watching them for you.
Mojo.
We'll keep talking about them for you. You keep supporting us, so we'll do our part. I just don't know why. I feel like he likes the idea. Sometimes he'll be like, yeah, people disagreed with this, so why don't you watch it? Like, okay. Yeah.
I mean, I'm always happy for a list video, but, maybe some variety, man. What about a looper or a screen rant?
Well, I gotta tell you, Andrew Hayes is working on something pretty big right now.
What's he working on?
If I'm not mistaken, if I pull up this message, John, I want you to react to this message.
Okay. Well, 2 goals that I have are that I want to be more consistent with making videos, and a few friends are going to be making a movie, so I would love for that to be released this year. Hot diggity, man. What kind of movie?
Everybody's doing.
I will be producing, writing, acting, and directing.
And composing the music, and he has Lady Gaga in it. He's doing so much with this movie. Good luck on this adventure. You're going to be tired.
This is the start of your M. Night Shyamalan journey. For this very afternoon, I discovered that he wrote, directed, produced, and starred in his very first film.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. He wants all the attention, and so does Andrew Hayes.
Yeah, man. Wear all those hats.
Wear them all. It's not going to stress you out one bit.
Yeah, enjoy being tense on set. But in all seriousness, that's awesome.
It's brave of you. Best of luck on your adventures, buddy. All right, well, subscribe. Click that notification bell. Check us out, Patreon. Bye-bye.